Hello world, this is Sarah Whitaker.
And Salty Dalty.
Here with Working the World Episode 9. We're here to talk about the fourth wall and how it's been broken repeatedly through professional wrestling. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on YouTube at LadyMorg0240. Okay, how has our week been?
You want to go ahead and give him the long answer or the short answer?
You banged your head.
Bang your head. Mental health will drive you mad. It's like if you can bind all three gimmicks together, that'd be a perfect song for it, but I ain't gonna do that because they already made think of Mickey Rourke when that comes to mind with the wrestler.
Well, last week, was it last week that we had Puppermania?
Technically 6 days ago.
6 days ago.
So that's the first time I've ever had to be... Actually, no, second time I've had to be more than one character on the same show. So it's like doing that split personality thing that, I've done before in the past and, never really got the chance to do it on a show. I've done it on, other things like streaming and stuff like that to where I kind of go back and forth, but it's like doing one version of my character that's, the complete psychopath in the middle pin wearing the white scrubs, and then there's another part of the character where I'm tobacco chewing biker and just very stoic and very nonchalant until I get to the point where I become that psycho and the scrubs and all that. So it's really fun to experiment and do that, and I get different reactions on both characters, but at the same time they're both very strong reactions in their own way.
You think you're going to play both of them at the same time just for different promotions?
Oh, God, yes. So,
yes.
Oh, well, because, I want to be able to bring different versions. Who knows, I might even have a third or fourth version of Salty Dalty to do in the future, depending on what creative calls. And because I'm at the point now where I just want to go ahead and experiment with everything with this character. It's like if I have multiple different personalities... it's like you can get a different flavor of me in each promotion. I've tried to do that to an extent with I got the traditional mental patient, and then you had Sweet and Salty Dalty with the face paint and all that when I was teaming with Willie Sweet, and then go and do this new character for the biker, and it's like I think we just seen the tip of the iceberg because I'm 30 years old and I feel like I'm starting to hit my stride, and some guys only hit that when they're peaking in high school.
Yeah, I mean, well, it worked for McFoley. It could work for you.
Absolutely. Now you know where some of his creative thought process has been going.
Definitely. Alrighty, well, let's work on the jargon of the day.
The three faces of Salty. I love it.
Three faces.
Maybe even more. I might do a mask character. You don't know.
Jargon of the day. Worked shoot.
Oh, God.
This is an interesting concept where you take something that's real and turn it into a shoot, or do you take something that's a shoot and turn it into its real?
Something that's for real, a shoot, and try to make an angle off of that and try to make money from it. Basically, for example, one of the best examples of a worked shoot is, are you familiar with the promotional war between Louisville and Memphis, between ICW and Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett's Continental Wrestling Association?
That's before my time.
Okay. You know the name. There was this one real psychopath of a wrestler by the name of Macho Man Randy Savage. I don't know if you heard about him or his snack food affiliations. But Randy and his family, his father, the miser, Angelo Poffo, and his brother and their mother, Lanny Poffo, and his mother, Judy, all got together and pulled their money together after, I don't know if Randy had a falling out with some promoters, because at the time he was working in Knoxville for Nick Goulas and working in Nashville for Nick Goulas, and before that he was working in the Carolinas with his brother Lanny Poffo as the Poffo brothers, and then he changed his name after he went to Georgia for a second and worked for Ole Anderson down there when he was booking. He actually gave him the name Randy Savage, and he became the Macho Man right after that, after they came back from Georgia to Tennessee. So, But Randy and his family started their own company called International Championship Wrestling that was based out of Lexington, Kentucky. And they were going into business against the NWA affiliated promotion of Continental Wrestling Association, which was Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler. And every single week on TV for like 4 years straight, Randy Savage went on TV challenging Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, and God, who else was he challenging? It was a big star in Memphis. Well, obviously he wasn't challenging Billy Robinson. Obviously, because Randy would get his ass stretched from ear to ear and toe to toe, but all the top stars in Memphis at that time, and they had some really really great talent there. Like Cowboy Bob Orton wrestled for ICW. Let's see who else. One Man Gang before he was the One Man Gang wrestled there. Let's see who else. Pistol Pez Watley, Rip Rogers, a lot of people that you might not have heard of in modern wrestling, but Rip is kind of famous again on Twitter and his Twitter rants. Like, how much of that have you seen in the past?
I've seen quite a bit of it, and it's like, I know like some of my friends have been from OVW and stuff like that, and they have
actually trained under him. Yeah, we're not going to name any names like Candyman or anything like that.
Oh.
Hey, I'm giving OVW a little bit of a rub here. Come on.
Back to the work shoots. So how exactly, other than the challenges, was it a work shoot?
Because Randy Savage and Bill Dundee actually got into a legit shoot fight outside of a gym where Randy Savage actually broke Bill Dundee's jaw from sucker punching him. But here's what happened with that. Somebody who was a fan, they would sometimes send gifts into wrestlers, and somebody brought a pair of trunks to Bill Dundee that said Macho Man on the back, and he wore them on TV. Randy Savage heard about this, and he was infuriated, and he actually called up Bill Dundee supposedly and went and told him, like, what the hell are you doing stealing my gimmick? Yeah, you trying to make money off being the Macho Man, and I'm the Macho Man. And Dundee and his fucking crass, Australian self's like, he lived in Australia, but he's from Scotland. He's like, I like the trunks and I'm going to wear them. End of story. Well, Randy Savage one day, shortly after this, because he was pissed off and mad about it, he figured that he was going to get a receipt in on Dundee. And he found out where Bill was. He was working at a gym, and Pez Watley and Rip Rogers were with him, and it's like, come on, we're going to go get Bill. And there was supposedly a female fan tipped off Randy where he was, like, hey, go get him. Because Dundee had his own enemies in the Memphis territory. We won't go into that and some of his behavior, allegedly. But found out where Dundee was. Dundee was walking out of the gym. Randy was actually walking right up to him when he was leaving. And Bill actually goes, like, hey, hi, Randy. And Randy just goes and sucker punches him, breaks his jaw with one shot. And Dundee comes back with a pistol from the trunk of his car and actually tries to shoot Randy. I don't know whether or not Randy got the pistol and pistol whipped him or Randy took off after that. I've heard two different sides of that story, but that's one instance. There was another instance where Randy Savage actually threw a brick through Jerry Lawler's house, through his window. Rip Rogers drove Randy down. It's like, Rip, we're going somewhere. We're going somewhere. Has a brick with him, and he's like, so what were you doing, Randy? He's like, I threw a brick through his window. It's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Little shit like that over the years Randy was doing just to get the ire and see if that they would be willing to get a rub off that, or see if he could say, it's like, hey, try to get in their head a little bit, try to drive business down for them, try to get their focus off of what they're doing onto Randy. And eventually the Poffos ran out of money. And Randy supposedly called up Jerry Jarrett and said, I'm sorry, I've been acting like a fool. I've been on whatever, doing whatever. It's like, I just want to say, hey, I appreciate, Jerry, how you've been professional through this. And this is from Jerry Jarrett. And it's like, well, Randy, where are you going to go work now? It's like, well, I guess I'll go to another territory and try to see if anybody will book me. It's like, well, you've been pitching this angle with Lawler and Dundee both for well over a year or two. How you feel about coming in and actually working that program with them and trying to see if we can draw some houses? And you think that they'll actually work with me after all this? Like, Randy, if you give me your word that you're not going to go shoot on these guys, I'm sure that they'd be willing to forgive you over this, especially because of the money. And they brought it in like ICW was invading the Memphis territory. It was in November of '83, a couple of years before before Savage went up to WWF and worked for Vince. But they pitched that angle and did it for over a year and a half, like off and on, going back to Lawler, Dundee, between Savage. And that, to my knowledge, is one of the first examples of a work shoot in the business.
Wow.
That kill some time for you?
Well, I mean, it's just...
Hi, Bill.
Especially getting the history of work shoots and whatnot, and...
That's the first example of one that I can come up with in the territory days, and that was kind of near the end.
So, I mean, it's not necessarily a one... Because especially with kayfabe being as strict as it used to be, I mean, it's like work shoots would have to be very articulated and planned meticulously so they don't reveal themselves and stuff like that. So, so then, are we going to go into the Monday Night Wars then?
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
I think that'd be the next logical thing.
Because it goes into a similar vein as to having promotions go at each other, and but I mean, not quite an invasion,
right?
But I mean,
well, that's what they were actually trying to do when the NWO came in, was make it seem like that they were actually, Vince was sending these guys in to, get a couple shots in on WCW. But at the same time, we'll save a little bit of that for the next episode, which would be crossovers, I believe. But let's go ahead and keep it on this today.
Yeah, because especially with keeping the kayfabe and whatnot, I mean, it's like, what challenges did the Monday Night Wars have in trying to keep kayfabe? Because it was mostly WCW doing the invasion angle.
Right. And WCW revealing the results of Monday Night Raw when it was being taped before, right at the beginning of Nitro. Because Bischoff will actually tell them, hey, don't start me on the air at 8 o'clock. Start me at like 7:57 so I can reveal their results even before they go on air. So, yeah.
Wow.
But Bischoff worked himself into a shoot on that one because, like, okay, I am going to try to put Vince out of business because that's what Ted Turner wants me to do, because Ted's got a hair up his ass about Vince and the falling out over Black Saturday. Which, by the way, that's another thing. It's like, going back to the invasion, Black Saturday, when Vince took over on Georgia Championship Wrestling, took the TBS time slot. So it's like, nobody saw that coming. That happened like in a matter of days, where the Briscoes and Jim Barnett sold their shares to Vince, and next thing you know, Vince McMahon's on Georgia TV, World Championship Wrestling with Hogan and those guys in the TBS studio.
I mean, there's a lot of reality that goes into making fantasy, and I mean,
art imitating life imitating art.
And I mean, is it okay anymore to break kayfabe in order to break the fourth wall? Because it's like a lot of people seem to be interested in the backstage politics just as much as the show these days, especially since they're available.
Well, I will go ahead and give you this. I don't think that there's any more angle rich in, say, a couple of boys getting into a shoot and doing things than Brett and Sean.
Yes.
Because they were building to that for well over 2 years, because Sean was lobbying for Brett's spot. He wanted to be the top guy. Brett needed to take some time off. He was going to go and do this television show up in Canada. I think it was their version of Lonesome Dove. And Bret and Shawn were starting to become ultra competitive towards each other. Shawn didn't like how Bret was trying to be the goody two shoes and didn't like the way he was like advocating for being Shawn wanting the more progressive, like edgier stuff, and Bret wanted to be a little bit more conservative. So they were clashing over that, and obviously the Sunny Days shit, which, from what I understand, I haven't heard this from Bret himself, but I've heard from a lot of people around him that, he and Sonny did have a fling. But I'm not 100% sure on that. You'd have to ask Bret and Sonny. But then again, Sonny had a reputation for having more than one guy at a time. I'll just leave it at that. But I don't think that helped anything on their end. But with it finally culminating between a hair-pulling match in the shower after Sunny Days, and then a couple months later, they're wrestling at Survivor Series, and the Screwjob happens.
The Montreal Screwjob.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell the audience about the Montreal Screwjob who might not know professional wrestling? It's a historical event.
Okay, well, actually going back to the Monday Night Wars, Vince in 1996 signed Bret Hart to like this $10 million contract and wanted Bret to stay with him for, 10 years, maybe only do a couple of those years wrestling and become like an ambassador. He tried to do the same thing for Randy Savage, but Randy wanted to continue wrestling full time, and Vince felt like maybe Randy's run on top's over, even though Savage wrestled for another 6 years full time after he left WWF. And Bret wanted to, go and do this. And Bret actually, I think, when he did the anti-American gimmick, did help drive business up quite a bit. But WCW was just killing them in ratings on TV. And they weren't getting quite the advertiser dollars that WCW was getting. And Vince said, it's like, Bret, I can't afford to keep you under this deal. So here's what I'm going to go ahead and do. And Bret was champion at this point, too. He just beaten Undertaker for the belt, and they were going to go with either Bret and Steve over at WrestleMania 14, or they were going to do something else with Bret and Shawn later in the year. I don't know, because I've heard multiple accounts on that. But Bret went because he received like I think it was $5 million contract, 2.5 years for 3 years with WCW, and Bret still had the title, and Bret and Shawn had that fight in the shower that I mentioned. Shawn and Bret, when they found out they were going to be wrestling each other at Survivor Series, and after that, they talks like Bret said, hey, I have no problem with putting you over, Shawn. Shawn was pissed off and kind of salty at this point, and because there were a lot of other things going on with Shawn at that point. But anyway, and Shawn goes up to Bret and says, well, I appreciate that, but I just want to let you know I'm not willing to put you over. And that lit a fire under Bret's ass like, nope, I'm not going to put Shawn over. I'll put anybody else you want over, not him after he made that comment. And they go to the pay-per-view, and it's like, Shawn's got to put me over first. Shawn's got to put me over first. And Vince wanted the belt off of Bret that night in Montreal. And he didn't mind losing in Canada as much as he didn't want to lose to Shawn that night. It's like, because Shawn's like, nope. F this guy, he's going to do business. And Shawn denied it, and Hunter apparently is the one that said, F him. If he's not going to do business, we'll have to do business for him. And everybody tries to take credit for the Montreal Screwjob, but Shawn's the one that said that, Triple H said, hey, we're just going to go out there and screw him. And they had a wire on Bret when he went in talking with Vince about the finish, and it's like, what spot could we do to maybe see if we can get a quick pin or something on Bret? And they were going to do a spot where Shawn puts Bret in the sharpshooter, Bret reverses out, and then they have a run-in. Well, before that run-in, and Shawn still had the sharpshooter on Bret, ding, 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 ring the bell, and Bret's like, you motherfucker. And then next thing you know, Bret starts tearing shit up on the ringside area, signaling WCW, because that's where he was going, a couple of days anyway, because he had he had to wait a little bit because he had a non-compete. He had to wait like 30 days after his contract ran out before he could appear on WCW TV. But, they, backstage politics actually dictated a lot of the Montreal Screwjob at that point, and of course, Brett knocked the piss out of Vince in the locker room, broke his ankle, and busted his eye. But, yeah, that's a perfect example of life imitating art, art imitating life.
So, basically, he didn't want to do the job. And
he didn't want to do the job to Sean on that pay-per-view because of the comment Sean said. That was Brett's account on it. Brett said, you even put me against Shamrock. I'll put Shamrock over. It's like, nope, we need it on Sean. We need it on Sean. Because I think Vince at that point gotten to the point where it's like, okay, we're going to go with Shawn Austin at Mania.
So basically the in-stage actual politics wrote what happened in the ring.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, there's been other instances about that as well, especially with Edge and Matt Hardy.
Oh, boy.
Never get a woman involved.
Yeah, well, because I don't know how long Matt and Lita were seeing each other. It must have been years at this point. And Edge had just recently gotten married to Val Venus' sister.
Ooh.
And apparently Edge and Lita hooked up on the road, and Edge was getting this big push with the Money in Bank, gimmick that he'd won WrestleMania 21. And they found out to the tabloids that, Edge and Lita are having an affair behind Matt's back, and they actually ended up firing Matt Hardy for a day over it.
Fired Matt over it.
Yeah, because Matt didn't have a leg to stand on with there, because they're not going to fire Lita because she's, selling too much, and plus she's kind of the one kind of trapped in the middle between these two guys. Edge is the one that's drawing money, rings on TV. Let's get rid of Matt. And then they bring Matt back after a day, and then had them actually work together after all this. And they actually culminate to where Edge's Money in the Bank contracts on the line on the first episode of Raw on the USA Network return, and actually kicked Matt off Raw and had him go to SmackDown and tried to give him a babyface run there. So...
They say you should never date in the business, and
yeah, well, we wouldn't be a thing if that wasn't.
We wouldn't be a thing if that wasn't.
Undertaker and Michelle McCool.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they told me back then, and I had.
Oh, it's true, because otherwise your husband will drive you even nuttier at home.
Yeah, but all right. Now that we've
talked, need some coffee.
I need some alcohol.
Oh, you too. How about a double scotch and soda?
I'd rather have a screwdriver, thank you.
All right, so in which end? Never mind.
Anyway, now that we've talked about real attempts at doing work shoots, what are some bad attempts at work shoots?
Anything Vince Russo did. In WCW, I should be more specific.
In WCW, yeah, because when he tried to write himself into the script.
Going back to Montreal. The main event at Starrcade 99. Vince Russo's, I think, third pay-per-view with the company. Bret Hart had won the WCW World title, defeating Chris Benoit. Yes, that's right, I said his name. It needs to be on the record book. Beat Chris Benoit, I think, in Toronto at WCW Mayhem in a tournament. It was a hell of a match. I recommend going back and watching it on Peacock because I love that Calgary style of wrestling, because it's like they brought like the best of Calgary right there between those two guys. Snug, physical, but very safe, and it's like very wrestling oriented, but very like working, psychology, storytelling oriented too. But going back and watching that match, and then they're setting up for Bret Hart and Goldberg, because they were setting up for that, vaguely throughout the year. And then Owen had his passing, and Bret took some time off when they were building that angle between Bret and Goldberg. Then they finally go and do that angle, and Bret, unfortunately gets his head kicked off by Goldberg during that match at Starrcade. But the angle is that they had Bret put Goldberg in the sharpshooter. Roddy Piper comes out to ringside, doesn't even check to see if Goldberg submitted, and rings the bell, ding, ding, and hands the belt to Bret when they're heading out, and Bret's all, concussed and all that. You can kind of see that. Going back and watching, it's kind of sad, but the powers that be, which are Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara, are the ones that supposedly rigged the finish, and they're acknowledging this on TV. That, yes. Trying to mend those wounds.
Using a work shoot in order to remedy a work shoot.
Yes. And then the next night, Brett has to go and wrestle Goldberg again, and the Outsiders come while Brett's got Goldberg in a figure four, and they start beating Goldberg and Piper with bats, because Piper comes out to try to do a run as a referee, and they form NWO 2000 with Brett as the leader. Yeah. And then, months later, Brett goes and does this work shoot on WCW Thunder after he figured out that he had to retire because of Goldberg's kick. And they do this one interview on there where Brett is... they're basically pleading everything out, their side of the story, on live TV and trying to run an angle out of it. And then I think Scott Steiner comes out and hits Goldberg over the head with like a lead pipe or something, because they were in the middle of an angle themselves during that time. And it's kind of like, you basically had a man who just found out he had to retire because of another wrestler kicking him in the head too hard, and then you have them actually go and do a legit confrontation in the ring while they're fresh off all this, and you're trying to run an angle off that. It's like, I'm sorry, but that's just not in good taste. I wouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people don't think ahead of time on, like, what would be in good taste before running angles.
Well, I tell you another one. A couple months before then, they actually tried to turn Goldberg heel, and Goldberg was vehemently against it, and the people weren't buying it that much. They actually go and have a pay-per-view up in Toronto, which actually Brett showed up at. It was called New Blood Rising, and they had a triple threat between Goldberg, Kevin Nash, and Scott Steiner, and Goldberg walks out in the middle of the match while he's trying to work as a heel, and goes up to Vince Russo, who's in the entryway, and flips him the bird and walks to the back, and they go and say on Thunder, it's like, I didn't want to turn into a heel, Vince. I told you it's over. They're doing this on WCW TV. Which, is like, I could see them doing something along those lines on Vince's TV, but WCW is supposed to be the old school wrestling product on that. And it's like, you're just insulting the wrestling fan and what they want, because they watch it to try to, suspend their disbelief and forget about their life's problems for a while, entertain themselves, forget about the 9-to-5 family life bullshit that, we all love and hate.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Now, going into breaking kayfabe in promos.
Mm-hmm.
A little less work shoot and a little more stylizing, because especially in this day and age, people are starting to use wrestling jargon more than just within the wrestling community, and they actually use it in promos. Do you think that using wrestling jargon in promos is bad taste?
Shut up, you bunch of kayfabers! First wrestler I ever heard do that was Dick Murdoch. He actually dropped that line on TBS in the 80s. Shut up, you bunch of kayfabers! Nope, they just thought Dickie was going nuts saying that, because they weren't smart to the insider terms at that point. This was before the internet, and the business was opened, but not like it was an open secret at that point. It's like, yeah, it's a work, but at the same time, they're still they're still trying to kayfabe everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But another example that would be Shawn Michaels in 95 saying that he would go over on Diesel at WrestleMania 11, even though he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But just Shawn just poking the bear like he would in them days. But I tell you what, I think the absolute pinnacle of that would be CM Punk's pipe bomb on stage.
Yeah.
Nobody, especially during that time when WWE was not acknowledging anything on the outside world or saying anything about internal politics or whatnot, that was groundbreaking, because CM Punk just went out there and said whatever the fuck he wanted to say, and inspired a whole new generation of just saying, it's like, hey, I don't give a shit about this. I'm going to tell it how it is. And that's kind of how it was in the territory days, because in a way, CM Punk is kind of like a newer version of a throwback on the mic. It's like he's, Rowdy Piper. He just doesn't give a shit. He says what's on his mind and doesn't need to be scripted. He just says, comes to his brain and figures out a way to be able to put in wrestling terms. So, but him going and saying this company would be better off when Vince McMahon's dead, but it's going to his doofus son-in-law. And, I thought that was the thing that, and him mentioning Colt Cabana, New Japan Pro Wrestling, things outside the WWE universe. It's like, nobody had done that. It's like, what's he doing? What's he doing? They're not supposed to. It's kind of like WWE does not acknowledge anybody that's not under their umbrella.
And we're going to be talking about that on
next
week's
giving
podcast.
A little teaser.
We're giving a little teaser because...
Hi, Bill.
Hey, Mr. Bill. And it's time to go home.
What did you just say?
I said it's time to go home.
I said, what did you just say?
I said, it's time to go home.
Nobody goes and tells me when it's time to go home.
Well, tune in to our next and final podcast using this format of podcasting, because after next week we're probably going to have to find another place to podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Deuce Space has a podcasting studio that we're probably going to be using over there, and since we've learned a lot from here, that we're going to be using their setup and seeing how that goes. But that's after next week.
So you really think we need to go home right now?
I really think we need to go home right now.
Oh, yeah? Well, you know what happened to the last guy who told me to go home? This is Salty Dalty. Y'all have a good time.
No. I gotta tell them where to find us. I mean, you can find us on our favorite podcast platform or on YouTube on Lady Morgue 0240. Thank you for listening and stay classy. Now you can choke me.
There's no more coming back.